Notch Brewing in Salem, Massachusetts is brewing and serving European-influenced beer in the beer hall and beer garden on the Salem Harbor. And if you haven't heard about this yet, by the middle of June, Notch will be opening a new location at 525 Western Ave in Brighton, Mass., which for you out-of-towners is only minutes from downtown Boston. The new Notch location will have a beer hall, a large beer garden, and check this out, an outdoor live performance and music space. And word has it they're already putting their schedule together for July and August. Pretty exciting news. After all, we've had to endure for the last 15 months. Notch's beer is available through Mass and Rhode Island, also through mail order direct from Mass and Pennsylvania. People love Notch beer. It's time to get yourself a Notch, or better yet, get over to Notch Brewing in Salem, Massachusetts. Welcome to Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico. I'm your host, Steve Ricardo. As we approach 100 episodes, we're going to start to mix some new things in and talk about musical trends, like the latest musical trends and new artists. Today, I want to talk to you about a 20-year-old that I found very intriguing that I had not heard of. His name is Finn Askew. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have even heard of Finn Askew, so I doubt you're even aware that the video for his song Roses has 32 million views on YouTube. You heard that right, 32 million views. When I watched the video and did a little research and even asked my friend Ellie V, who, by the way, listens to a lot of new music and knows way more about new artists than I do, she didn't even know much about Finn Askew. We don't even know if we're saying his name right. Finn Askew, A-S-K-E-W. So we pondered, how the hell does this 20-year-old kid from Wellington, England, population 14,000, who recorded this song on GarageBand in his house, could have become an overnight sensation? She once again reminded me of something I already knew, and I always say, it's all about timing and luck. It's great to be talented, but I can tell you a list of 1,000 bands that are talented, but only a fraction of which actually become top-selling stars, big rock stars. Finn Askew has 12 million streams on Spotify, 12 million. He recorded the song Roses on a microphone, which cost 20 francs. That's 22 American dollars. The website lineofbestfit.com wrote this about Askew just before he turned 20, which just happened to be May 21st. Quote, the 19-year-old's success has been meteoric. His sky-gazing indie sound, washed one moment in a rosy hue of pop and the next polished to a high R&B sheen, has racked up streams in the millions since his debut track Roses dropped last year. It's pretty incredible, right? This is what else they had to say. Finn Askew's ambitions for this year, much like himself, are, of course, incredibly modest. He says, quote, I'm in a position where I'm not worried about what track's next. I have 150 songs in the bank, probably more. I'm living comfy. But the plan is to just slowly take over the world and be number one. That's what I'm here for. I want to go down in history. I don't care how long it takes. He grins. It is what it is. This story reminded me of a funny story. Back in 1986, when my good friend and famous DJ, West Coast DJ, Ton Mastery, most famous for KNAC and KLOS, and LA rock manager, R.I.P. by the way, Tom passed away a few years ago. Her and LA rock manager Johnny Teagarden picked me up to go to a show at the country club in Reseda in the San Fernando Valley. There was this guy named Axl Rose sitting in the back seat when I got in the car. And this guy spent 30 minutes from the drive to the South Bay to Reseda, telling me he was going to be the biggest star in the world. It was nonstop. I remember getting out of the car and saying to Ton, "What is up with this guy?" And she looked at me straight in the eye and she said, "He's right. He's going to be huge." Of course, his band was Guns N' Roses. I'm not saying, but it just blows my mind that an artist like Finn Askew, who most people I ask don't even know anything about, has 12 million streams on Spotify and 32 million views of the video Roses on YouTube. This, my friends, is your musical trend of the week. As promised, here is our interview with hardcore punk legend and friend Chris Doherty. But first, let's listen to the track Out on the Couch by Gangrene.
Last night I had too much of some good stuff. So today I rely on my couch. I checked the preview guide and there's nothing I can find. So I roll myself a big pepper. Oh, on the couch, out on the couch. Oh, on the couch, down for the count. The channels come and go. I missed my favorite show, and I lost the remote control. So I crack another beer, and I chop another line, and pretty soon I'm out of my mind. Oh, I'm on the couch, out on the couch. Oh, I'm on the couch, I'm not leaving the house. Out on the couch, out on the couch. Out on the couch, down for the count. I'm on the couch, out on the couch. I'm on the couch, I'm not leaving the house. I'm on the couch, out on the couch. Out on the couch, down for the count.
All right, that gem was from the 1997 album Another Case of Brutality from Gangrene. The song was called Out on the Couch. Please welcome to the show the one, the only, Chris Doherty from Gangrene. Hi, Chris.
I've often been referred to as the man that needs no introduction, but thank you.
And you brought a friend with you, Mike Worm from the band Worm.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike.
How you doing?
Cool.
Good. Yeah, they're picking up the Boston hardcore.
They're picking it up where you left it off?
Yeah. One of my favorite, most exciting bands in the city right now.
Nice. I'm going to ask you about a question about that. But can we go way back and start like way back? Because I want to do a little history here. Believe it or not, it was 41 years ago when you and Mike Dean and Bill Manley started Gangrene. You were only 15, I believe. What do you remember anything about those days at all?
Oh yeah, it was a blast. We were young kids and had a lot of ambition and just I used to get off the school bus every day, go to my house, change my clothes, grab my guitar, and walk to Mike Dean's house to practice. And years later, I ended up sleeping with this girl that that said she saw me walking every day and said, "Man, I know that guy's going to do something musically."
She was right.
Yeah.
You guys had 7 songs on the This Is Boston, Not L.A. compilation, which now, even then, it's regarded as one of the greatest hardcore records ever released.
Well, yeah, if it is regarded as one of the greatest hardcore records ever released, it wasn't just because of us. I mean, we got a lot of fame and notoriety because of our tracks on there, but there was also, the FU's and Jerry's Kids and the Freeze. Yeah. So it was a good representation of Boston hardcore at the time.
I'm curious about this. Around that time, you know how the Boston crew was around and they were really pushing the straight edge scene on everybody. What did they think about you guys? Because you guys were not straight edge. It's true, Mike. They were not straight edge.
I think we were far from it, but, we were still in high school, sophomores and juniors in high school. We really weren't into being out on our own and being unsupervised at that point. So we weren't as messed up as we later became in later years.
Did you get to know like Al and Dave Smalley and all those guys?
Yeah. Dave Smalley's still a great friend. In fact, we played a show up in Flint, Michigan with Stiff Little Fingers, and his band All or whatever, he's been in a bunch of bands, played in Detroit, and they showed up at the show afterwards. And I felt really guilty because I'm sitting there with Dave Smalley, and I don't know if I should say this, but he's got a straight edge for life tattoo, and we got fucking hammered.
That doesn't surprise me, and I'm sure Dave wasn't that surprised either by it. I hung around with Dave a lot in L.A. in the early 90s when he was putting Down by Law together, and he would come out and watch Celtic games with me, and I was pounding brews down, and he was just hanging out, drinking his, soda water and lime or whatever Dave drank. Did you, a few years after you actually got the original Gang Green together, you found yourself in another incredible situation. You were in Jerry's Kids. Is This My World came out in 1983. Another record that's highly, highly regarded. That was like right smack in the middle of the whole American hardcore scene. What was that like for you, being with Jerry's Kids, who a lot of people still say is like the greatest live band ever? When you were in the band, you guys were on fire.
I don't want to say I grew up in a town called Braintree because I still haven't grown up yet, but when I was a kid, I lived in Braintree. And it produced a lot of crazy punk rockers. You got me, Mike Dean, Bill Manley, Bob Sensi, Rick Jones, Brian Beska, Dave Aronson, who have recently passed away, and I was really sorry when I heard that. But, we had done Boston, L.A. at Radio Beat, and then we recorded Is This My World at a slightly better studio with Lou Giordano producing and engineering.
Famous producer.
Yeah. And that was a lot of fun. I mean, it was on Newbury Street, like 5th, 6th floor up there. And of course, we're just young troublemaking kids, and there's a window that looks right out to the intersection of Newbury Street and Mass Ave, and we were throwing anything we could at trying to get it into like cars with sunroofs or moonroofs open, earplugs to bottle caps, you name it. We were just throwing all kinds of shit out the window.
I'm sure Lou really appreciated that.
Yeah.
You've been friends with those Jerry's Kids guys for a long time.
Yeah, and I just recently saw Bob and Rick, and it was great to see them.
Cool, man. I saw them years ago, but I thought when the hardcore reunion show happened, which you guys, Gang Green, also played in Saugus Revere, whatever that was, I couldn't believe how good Jerry's Kids were that night. It was like they didn't miss a beat. I mean, all the bands were great, but Jerry's Kids, everyone was like, oh my God, these guys are like amazing.
Yeah, a lot of my influence, I have to give, tip my hat to Rick Jones. He was on the forefront. Well, he might have been the only one that we hung around with that had a job, so he could afford to buy records. And he would, get the new imports coming in from London, and he'd say, hey, check out this band Discharge. And Bob often says that, Jerry's Kids being from Boston is kind of, logistically between Los Angeles and London, so they kind of had the West Coast hardcore punk thing, like, the Jerks and Suicidal brought into it, and, like
Discharge. Yeah, Discharge is a great example when you think about that, their sound, Al Quint was on my show not too long ago, and that's his favorite band ever is Discharge. He always talks about how great they were, and when you listen to their music now, you realize how influential they really were in the whole scene. Once the once you moved on, I think you played in another band too after Jerry's Kids, and why does their name escape me?
I was at Stranglehold for a while.
Stranglehold.
Yeah.
And they were like only around for a short period of time, but what a great band.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we did it. We did a U.S. tour the summer I graduated high school. So, yeah, that was my first journey into the decadent lifestyle.
Oh, so really, the first time you actually went on the road was with Stranglehold?
Yes.
Wow.
It was Stranglehold and the FUs.
Wow, nice tour.
Yeah, it was fun.
Nice tour. And this led up to like the second lineup of Gangrene, which, a lot of people, with the Stilfen brothers and Walter Gustafson, it's like probably considered the most famous version of the band, mostly because, Alcohol, Skate to Hell, the another Wasted Night album on Tang, which is like, I know I keep saying one of the greatest records ever, but Chris, let's face it, you've been on a lot of great projects over the years, so it's hard.
I'm blushing over here, Steve. Come on.
It's hard not to say that
Right.
because when you think about this is Boston, not L.A., Jerry's Kids, and now another Wasted Night. How can you not say these are not some of the most influential?
Well, I once heard Joe Strummer say the band's only as good as its drummer. And Mike Dean was an amazing drummer, and we all know that Walter is probably one of the best in the world, still to this day.
Yeah, Walter's great,
Yeah,
man.
and Brian Beska played in Jerry's Kids, and then when Walter left Gangrene to pursue his career with the Outlets, Brian came into Gangrene. And you mentioned Jerry's Kids. It was weird. We knew Walter was leaving. The Outlets got some deal. You might have even signed him.
I did sign him. We're going to talk about you guys staying at my house in LA in a couple minutes because that was unforgettable. Oh, yeah, that's why. Well, yeah, if you recall correctly, when you guys did come out to California, and I might as well tell the story now. I had Gangrene and the Outlets and Springer. You guys brought Springer with you, all staying in my apartment in Redondo Beach at the same time. My couch got broken. It was unforgettable. And there were so many crazy things that happened. But the craziest thing I remember is Gangrene had a show in San Diego at 8 o'clock, and the Outlets had a show in L.A. at 11 o'clock. And Walter played in both bands in the same night.
Yeah, we played at a roller skate rink in San Diego. Fear was the headliner, and then us, and then SNFU and
Battalion? Was Battalion on that show?
Adrenaline OD, maybe.
Yeah, it was a huge show,
Yeah.
but I was the one that had to drive from San Diego to L.A. and make it to the show. The minute Walter got off the stage, it was like literally 9 o'clock. And making it from San Diego to L.A. in 2 hours is not easy. We make it. They get on stage. Dave Barton was with me. Dave took the ride with me. They get on stage, first string. Barton breaks a string. But like we rushed here. It was at this Madame Wong's was the name of the club.
It was a Cathay de Grand, maybe?
It was They did play Cathay de Grand that week. And El Duce
He was out there with his pants down.
You were at that show.
Yeah, he was out there with his pants down, like dancing around the floor.
El Duce from the Mentor?
That Mentor, the Outlets are on stage playing, and El Duce decides to pull his pants down and dance. Everything hanging out. In front of the band, and you know what? The band never stopped. They just blew right through their set, and people in the audience were horrified, especially the women. It was pretty. It was a punk rock moment,
and they were horrified of El Duce, not the Outlets.
Yeah, El Duce was. Just to take a step back here, before I was going to bring this up before you guys came to LA, because a lot of good stuff happened when you guys were there. But before that is kind of when Gangrene really blew up with that PMRC Sucks 12-inch, which was you guys did a cover of Voices Carry, called it Voices Scary, the Till Tuesday song.
Yeah, and then they had on the cover of that was a picture of myself and Amy Mann from the Boston Music Awards.
It's hard to find that, man. That's a real collector's item. I don't own that one.
And then Tang got a cease and desist order from Till Tuesday's attorney.
Is that why the record disappeared off the face of the earth?
No, that's why we changed the cover.
Yes. But that was off the heels of winning the Rock and Roll Rumble. And for people in the Boston area that have been seeing the Rumble lately, this was at the Orpheum Theater that you guys won the Rumble. That's where the finals used to be. And there were like 2,000 people there. It was unbelievable.
Oh, it was full, yeah. I mean, we ruined it and I apologize. We ruined it for a lot of bands. I mean, there were sponsors that would never have anything to do with it again after we won.
Yeah, it was
Jordan Marsh used to be a sponsor. They backed right out.
thanks to Gangrene.
And there were, prizes that we got a chunk of cash and all kinds of prizes, and there were people that like didn't want to give us the prizes. There was a guy that had a sound studio down in Brockton that, one of the prizes you could practice there for a month. And he's like, no, I don't want to give it to him.
Didn't want Gangrene in his building. It was funny, too, because Chuck and Glenn were pretty mellow dudes, It was the other two guys in the band, Walter and this guy over here, Chris Doherty, that were like, on another level of insanity, which I appreciated greatly. But going back to after that, when you were in L.A., I'll never forget going to that show at Al's Bar when you guys played... Gangrene played at Al's Bar, and Springer got on stage, and you guys did a whole lot of Rosie together. It was, like, unbelievable. The crowd was like... Because SSD was, pretty big band, too. So
yeah, and I got to tell you, Springer is a lifelong, unconditional friend, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but I about 2.5 years ago, I suffered a stroke, and there were a couple of benefits for me, and he was kind enough to, help out at both of them.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the benefit as we came along. I was living in Pittsburgh. Otherwise, I would have been at that show, Chris. You know that, man.
I know you wouldn't have missed it.
I watched a lot of it online, and I got to tell you, you know what band stole the show?
Outlets.
They were unbelievable.
They were awesome that night, weren't they?
They were just incredible. Everyone that was there even says that too. They had an unbelievable time. But when you guys were all
such a great night.
When you were at the show, Mike,
Yeah, we opened up.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys played too. Cool. Yeah. So that must have been real early because didn't the outlets go on at like 9 or something?
Outlets went on earlier than that. I think they went on at 8.
Wow.
The Dogmatics and Unnatural Acts played before them.
Well, what a lineup, man! What a lineup! I wish I could have been there for that.
Here's what happened. That was January 11th. On October 28th, I suffered a stroke, and I was in a hospital bed till January 9th. And on the 9th, I flew back to Boston.
Yeah, I was really surprised when I heard that you were at the show. I was happy that you were there, but I was surprised at the same time.
I was in a wheelchair.
Yeah, I heard, man. I heard. I'm glad that you're sitting here right now and we didn't have to wheel you in here, man. It makes me very happy.
I'm just glad I'm above ground.
Yeah, we all are, man.
Actually, we're down in the basement. I take that back.
we're right next to a cemetery, by the way, which is on the other side of that wall. And so you're not really that far away.
That's filled with plenty of people that had plans for tomorrow.
All right, we've been all over the place, but I kind of expected that. I wanted to ask you about your time with Roadrunner because you recorded 4 records with Roadrunner, and that was a pretty busy period for you because you guys went on these major tours. You went to Europe. You did everything. Case Wessels is kind of a different guy than Curtis Casella. Those are your 2 record label guys. They couldn't be more opposite. What was it like for you on Roadrunner? Do you remember?
Well, I mean, after the Rumble thing, we were, kind of hot and being sought after by some labels. And I think we went with them because they offered us the most money. Which, hey, why not, right?
Yeah, if you need the money, yes. And I know Roadrunner has a lot of money because I worked there. Yeah. I actually was one of the first people that originally told Case Wessels that we should sign Roadrunner. You guys didn't get signed until after I left. I don't know, Doug Keogh, I think, may have been the one that signed you guys, but it was one of those things.
I think there was a few times we hung out in that New York office together.
Yeah, definitely. I had Gangrene was always on my radar, but I could never sign them because they were always in too big a demand. And by the time Jai started Giant Records, you guys didn't need me. You were already on Roadrunner Records. Otherwise, I would have.
Right. Well, I mean, I'll tell you this. I think in America, we would have been fine staying with Tang, but Roadrunner and their team just did a fantastic job over in Europe. The publicity, the press, the support they gave us. I mean, it was like being on a major label over there.
Yeah, Case Wessels is one thing about him is he's not a generous guy. He's very generous, and he gives a lot of money to the bands, and he helps them get on the road. I signed the Neighborhoods and the Great Cat to Roadrunner, so I know what it was like having Case around. They definitely dished out the cash. There's no doubt about that. Plus, you guys had a really good manager too. I'm sure did a good job negotiating the whole thing, Mr. Alec Peters.
Yeah, and I mentioned to you earlier that he did send his regards and
Yeah.
his best. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Alec. I know you're listening.
Yeah, he's, I have to say he's one of the best and closest friends I've had, throughout my life. And we kind of started this gangrene thing together, and he's been in and out through different phases of it, but always one of my closest and best friends.
Yeah, I know. That's one thing I like about you is you stuck by certain people like him and Curtis pretty much the whole time, man. I mean, those guys have been there by your side pretty much the whole time. They've been supporters and, like, always gangrene at the top, because I could tell when I talked to Curtis when he was on my show how much mutual respect you guys have for each other.
Yeah, I mean, I love Curtis and his girlfriend Penny and his daughter Lucci and his son Dylan. I mean, I stayed at their house for probably a month and a half in the summer of 2018 or 19.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, the Roadrunner era was fun for you and everything, but I will never forget 1997 when what I think is probably one of the most underrated records that Gangrene has put out, which is actually being reissued by Tang, Another Case of Brutality. The reason that record means a lot to me is not just because I sing and gang vocals on 3 of the songs on my record. I'm bragging because
That's an awesome
I
record.
love having my name on that record for being a background vocalist with Sunshine Voles and I can't remember who else, but I just remember me and Sunshine were there because we were in that building all the time. It was the old New Alliance building on 1312 Boylston Street. It was Dave Minahan's original studio, not Woolly Mammoth, Capertown Sound. And I will never forget that week that you guys recorded there, because I hung around drunk most of the time in the studio with Gangrene and Dave Minahan and Sunshine and a few other people. And now that record is becoming more popular than ever. That must make you happy, right, Chris?
Yeah. That was probably my greatest recording experience. I mean, being a kid and a musician in Boston, Minahan was my idol, like my idol growing up as, the best guitar player in the city and just great performer. I learned so much from him. And then to actually get into a studio and record with him. And, the way he tells the story is really passionate. What we would do, I mean, I think there's like 23 or 24 songs on that record.
It's a lot of songs.
Yeah. And Walter would come over to my house, and we'd sit there and we'd write the songs sitting at my kitchen table and put them on this little tape recorder. When we were in the studio, we get the drum track down first.
When you're doing the basics, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just concentrate on the drums, and we got these incredible drum tracks. And then we go out in the hallway so I could smoke a cigarette, and we, press play and go to the next song, to get the arrangements down, in our head. And so we got all these drum tracks down, and then it was probably one of the greatest days of my life. I had a guitar on me for, I think, about 12 hours. I do, a couple of rhythm guitar tracks. I do the solos, and the first thing I did was the bass track, so I played bass on that whole record.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow, cool, man. I don't remember. Well, it's 1997. I mean, it was a while ago. I can't really remember. I do remember having a lot of fun, and I do remember that we did "Suspect Device" by Stiff Little Fingers,
Right.
And I got to be out on the couch, which I thought was one of the best songs on the record.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite songs.
The whole
on
record
too.
is fantastic, but that song. I mean, I don't know if there's a song over 3 minutes long on the whole record. I doubt it. It was probably the 24 songs probably tracked in under 60 minutes.
Yeah, I think it is. Yes.
You got 6,000 crucified slaves on there too.
Right. Yeah, like I said, it was like
And that was-
accidental overdose. Or
That was a song I wrote with Dave from Tree.
accidental overdose.
No, 6,000 Crucified Slaves.
Nice. Yeah, I mean the record was just like
Weekend
fantastic.
Millionaire.
Yeah.
Weekend Millionaire. Yeah, I
Well-
mean
Well, the 6,000 Crucified Slaves song goes really deep because I was meeting Dave one morning, and I was meeting him in Alston, and we met up for breakfast, and a couple of his roommates were there, Dina Moore and Stephanie Marks, and I ended up marrying.
Stephanie, I was going to say, you mean Stephanie
I ended
Doherty?
up marrying Stephanie. Yep. And together we have an amazing daughter named Grace Doherty.
Grace. I see pictures of Grace all the time, and I got a present for Grace that you can send to her.
Oh,
now she's gonna know about it because she's gonna hear this on Monday before she gets it, but she'll still be surprised. I don't know if you remember this story. We were at the Rat. John Bush came to town. He was my buddy. He was in Anthrax at the time.
Like Armored Saint before that or something, right?
Yeah, he's back in Armored Saint now. And we were at the Rat, and we got in a car with Stephanie driving. Susan Cappuccioni loves when I tell this story. And there was another girl that I can't remember. The six of us got on this old beat-up car that Stephanie had, and we decided to go to Alston from the Rat, Bunratty's, I think. And we're on our way over there, and right when we're looking for a parking place, Stephanie sees one, hits the curve, and we get a flat tire.
Oh,
So we were like, should we fix the flat? And Stephanie's like, fuck it,
I think
man.
I've heard Stephanie tell that story, but John Bush was really impressed that she had a case of beer in the back of the car.
That's right, she did. We were driving around drinking. I probably shouldn't tell this, but we were doing this.
I think the statute of limitations is up on this.
That was like before. That was before Brutality. That was more like 90. I was working for A&M, and I wasn't even living in Boston, so it had to be like 96, 95, 96, something like that. But that was one of the best nights of my life.
John Bush was a great guy, man. I really like the stuff he did with Anthrax. I've always been a huge Anthrax fan, but I actually thought he was a little bit tougher than Joey Belladonna.
Personally, I like Bush's stuff better than Belladonna's. I mean, sorry, Joey. But, and I got to hang around with Anthrax a lot at that time. It was cool going on their tour bus and hanging out with those guys. They were like, Frankie Bello was such a cool dude.
We did a Sunday afternoon show at CBGB's, and I was standing out front after the show, and Jimmy Gestapo from Murphy's Law was saying, "Hey, the guys from Anthrax were in the pit the whole night." I was like, "Who's Anthrax?" He goes, "Oh, this metal band." But Scott was there. That's the first time I met Scott Ian.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've made quite a name for themselves. There's no doubt about that. I didn't know if you would remember that story or not. There's so many stories, Chris.
Yeah, I do remember.
There's so many. I mean, if I thought about it, I'm sure I could think
Actually, we were at the Rat for an outlet show, weren't we?
Was it the outlets that night? Yeah, that makes sense. Bush was like so popular with Brian, the bartender at the Rat. Whenever I'd bring him in there, it was like free beer. Hey, there's Chris Doherty. No, don't bring him over here. We'll run out of beer. And there was other things going on that night too.
There were lots of bartenders at the Rat that were very gracious to me.
Yeah, you were loved.
And I think it was probably because every time Gangrene played there, they made a ton of money.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen Gangrene all over the place. I was trying to think of all the times I've seen the band. I've seen you guys in Boston a zillion times, New York. I remember I went and saw you guys at the Lucky Dog Music Hall once in Worcester. That was really Chili Kurtz from KHT came on stage and played harmonica, and you guys did a Beastie Boys song. That was pretty cool. And then L.A. several times, San Diego. And then I was really pissed off when you guys were in Pittsburgh 3 years ago when I was living there. I didn't even know you guys played. And 2 days later, Curtis is like, "Why didn't you come to the show?" And I'm like,
Curtis was with me. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, because he signed a band from Pittsburgh. He was out there signing a band while he was with you on the road. Yeah. And, I couldn't believe I missed the show. I was so pissed off. You played at Howlers.
That was the night that the Penguins won the Stanley Cup.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that was that year, huh?
Yeah. I remember I was outside smoking a cigarette in the whole city. You heard horns beeping, fireworks going off, explosions. It was... just like it would be in Boston if the Bruins won the Cup.
Yeah, that was a big rivalry, the Bruins and Penguins. I wasn't popular in Pittsburgh when I wore my Bruins hat around, that's for sure, man.
Yeah, well, I lived in Cincinnati for 20 years.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Cincinnati, man. You actually put together another version of the band while you were out there?
Well, you know, I lived there for a couple of years, and I really didn't want to get involved in the music scene because the music scene in Cincinnati really sucks.
It does.
Yeah.
Sorry. Although the Greenhorns I like are from there, and the Ass Ponies. Those are the only two bands I can think of
Yeah,
from Cincinnati.
There was
that
a band called Sluggo,
Sluggo, yeah.
and the guitar player Chris Doherty ended up becoming one of my best friends. He works at Sam Ash Music out there.
I just remembered another a time I saw Gangrene. That was a lot of fun. Gangrene played with Evan Dando opening up in New Hampshire. Do you remember that show?
Yeah, you were at that show?
Yes.
That was a blast.
It was great hanging out with you and Evan in the same night because you guys are two of the coolest dudes ever to come from Boston.
You mentioned Susan
Cappuccioni?
Yeah.
She's laughing right now.
I ran into her last summer. The Lemonheads played at the Yarmouth Drive-In.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she came and said, "Hey, Chris and Susan," and I really kind of draw a blank. I mean, there's been so many women that have come and gone into my life that.
You're funny, man. I believe it.
She was looking really good, and I thought, yeah, maybe.
Stephanie's probably not laughing right now, or maybe she is,
But then I took a picture of me and Susan together and sent it to Stephanie. She wrote back Susan Cappuccioni, and then I remembered who she was.
Well, she was in the car the night we hit the curb, man, and we had the case of beer in the back seat, which was legendary. Now, because of the stroke and everything, man, are you going to be able to play?
Well, I'm walking now, and I was told I'd never be able to walk again, and I'm starting to see some movement in my fingers. I had a physical therapist that told me, or an occupational therapist told me that you have to get used to the idea your fingers may never move again. I said, that's not a fucking option, because I will play again.
You played so fast, Chris. Man. I was listening to another Case of Brutality this morning, and I was like, the guitar is so fast on that record. But then I'm like, but wait a second. Jerry's Kids was pretty fast, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
In Boston, LA, Gangrene stuff was incredibly fast.
Yeah, you're like one of the fastest in the world, man. Cannibal Corpse has nothing on Gangrene, man. I'm sorry. They don't. So you brought Mike down with you, and Mike's in the band Worm, Mike Worm, and there must be a reason why you brought Mike with you, Chris. You love his band, right?
Yeah, I love his band. He promoted a show that we played in
Nantasket at the C-Note.
At the C-Note, and he played the benefit at the Paradise. And we just become good friends. We hang out a lot. And
I put out a compilation CD in January, or February rather, to help raise money for the C-Note, so they don't close down during.
Are they going to stay open?
They're doing live streams now, so it's looking very promising once all this shit gets lifted.
Can we find your stuff on Bandcamp and places like that? So just Worm on Bandcamp.
Worm Punk's on Bandcamp, and then I kind of started a little record company like 4 or 5 years ago. It's very small, but that's what
I contributed a song to that compilation.
Yeah, we got Gangrene on there, right. Siege, The Freeze, Dogmatics, Tree.
Okay, wow, really?
For the big names, and then we got all small local bands that have been playing around for years that have played the club.
Well, can I just tell you, The Freeze is one of my favorite bands ever. Land of the Lost, that record is so brilliant. I mean, you must have played shows with those guys, Chris.
Many, yeah. In fact, they were kind of like the first punk band from this area.
Yeah, they were from the Cape, too, which is kind of funny.
And we used to go down to the Cape, to the Mill Hill Club, and they'd have, Gangrene and Jerry's Kids and the FUs and the Freeze headline, and it was just a wild time.
Wow, what a lineup. Yeah. Oh, man, I've seen some great lineups, but the hardcore matinee, we mentioned it earlier.
But down the Cape, they may not have appreciated as much as they would have in Boston.
Did you think the Freeze had a hard time breaking into the Boston scene? Because there's rumors that they did. I mean, were they respected by all the other bands? I'm sure you respected them.
Yeah, I respected them, yeah. But I'm a respectable guy, so I give respect where it's deserved. But
that is true.
I think, they were older. I mean, a lot of, like Gangrene and Jerry's Kids were still in high school when Boston LA was recorded. The Freeze were, old enough to drink and were drinking. And
Maybe that's why the Boston crew didn't greet
yeah.
them with open arms.
and
Sorry, Al.
and did
I've asked Al Barilla to come on my show, but his demands are high.
and I think they did crystal meth before it was like fashionable.
So let's talk about the hardcore matinee show, because you were in the that was the XXX Boston hardcore movie, but before that you were also in American Hardcore, and I think you scared a lot of people with your story about going to the promoter's house with a baseball bat in Salt Lake City. You didn't hit the guy with the bat though, right?
I was ready to.
Did he give you some money?
Yeah, I think we got maybe $40-$50 out of the guy. We took everything he had.
I'm sure he'll never forget
and
you.
I think we stole his ghetto blast. Took his ghetto blaster too. But I mean, we drove and arrived in fumes to the place we were supposed to play, and there was no show going on. So we found the guy's house. Pulled him out of bed. He was in bed with his girlfriend. And just like circled the guy out front, and I said, "Go get the bat." And we had like like kind of a t-ball sized bat, but good enough to. Bigger than what you'd beat a fish with, but good enough to beat a human with. And he's like, "Bat, what?" The guy started freaking out. And then his final straw was, I said, "Do you have any drugs?" And he goes, "Drugs? You guys are fucked."
Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico does not condone all the comments of the guests on the show, but, people can say whatever they want. Okay, I would never beat a fish with a bat myself, personally. So I don't think Chris would either. I think he was just...
Well, if a shark jumped on your boat and he was biting your ankle, you'd hit him with something, wouldn't you?
Good point.
So after you became a bigger star after American Hardcore, there was the Boston Hardcore documentary which Drew Stone put together, which was excellent. And the show, Gangrene played with all those other bands, DYS, Jerry's Kids, Slapshot, FUs. Am I forgetting somebody? Were you at that show, Mike?
No.
It was great. It was in the Wonderland Ballroom, I think.
Yeah, it was a big show. I mean, it was fun.
It was unbelievable.
It was like a high school reunion.
The only band that wasn't there was SSD.
Not that I ever went to one of those, but...
Yeah, the only band that didn't play from that original crew was SSD,
And it was strange because Chris Foley were there and Jamie Sharappa were there and Springer, of course.
Oh, yeah, he did sing a song with
Springer
somebody.
wouldn't miss an opportunity to.
Right. Yeah, I wish Al was there.
Slapshot played.
Slapshot, yep. Yeah, that was just fantastic. And everybody was there. I came in from out of town for that show because there was no way I was going to miss that. Plus, I was in the documentary. They interviewed me. It was funny. I was at a hotel across the street hanging out with Ricky Rocket from Poison. And I mean, I was in the studio recording, right? They were interviewing me.
Right.
Katie, the cleaning lady, and them, they were doing an interview with me. And I see Poison's tour bus, one of them across the street. I'm like, Poison's across the street? And I knew those guys because I worked with them at Enigma. So I went over and I was hanging out with Ricky Rocket the same day that I did the Boston the XXX Boston. I always get the name of that film.
All ages.
All ages show. Yeah. XXX All Ages show. Doc, if you haven't seen it, it's a great documentary about the Boston scene.
Drew also did a good one on the New York hardcore scene.
Yeah. Yeah, and he did the Michael Alago documentary, which is really good.
Who the F is this guy?
Yeah, who the fuck is that guy? Michael's a great guy.
That was really well done. And I knew Michael Alago, and I think he was kind of caught in Gangrene, and if we weren't so goddamn homophobic at the time, he may have signed us.
Wow, you're just letting it all out today, Chris. The guy that signed Metallica we're talking about right now, Michael Alago. I'm sure he probably wanted to sign Gangrene. So, Chris, I asked you before you came on to tell me about new bands that you listen to that you like. We already know you like Worm because you brought Mike with you.
Yeah,
is there anyone else that you're listening to that you like that's
newer?
Yeah,
a good friend of mine, Scruffy Wallace, that was the bagpipe player for the Dropkick Murphys.
Oh, yeah, he's got a new band.
He's got a new band now called Boston Shadows.
If I'm not mistaken, I think they might have recorded here.
I think they
down
did,
the hall with Ethan in New Alliance. Yeah. I talked to a couple.
Yeah, they recorded an EP and it came out great.
Don't those guys play with Dave Tree too? Some of them.
What's Dave Tree?
I think some of them, were in Dead Friends.
Yeah, right.
Mark
That's what
Doherty's
I thought.
band there.
That's what I thought, man. Well, Chris, thank you, man, for coming on the show. You know,
Oh, we're not saying goodbye now, are we? I'm just getting warmed up.
well, if you have some other things that you want to share with my listeners, the microphone's right in front of you. I'm not going to kick you out the door, that's for sure.
It
Wow.
wouldn't be if I got kicked out the door. It wouldn't be the first time, believe me.
Oh, you know what? I did want to mention that Tang is re-releasing another Case of Brutality on green vinyl. I think it's coming out on Record Store Day, which is in June, right around the corner.
And I think he's also releasing this. When the DC hardcore scene was at its peak, Gangrene played at the Wilson Center with like Government Issue, Scream, Double O, a bunch of DC hardcore bands.
Good ones.
Yeah. And it was, probably our first gig out of town. I think SSD had played down there. I remember Al being like a little, you don't know what it's like to drive down there. We flew. We get 3, teenage kids getting on an airplane.
You guys flew down?
Yeah.
You took the private Gangrene plane and SSD took the van.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, we took the shuttle.
Well, you played with GI, man. I love Government Issue. Tom Lyle was on my show. They're one of my favorite bands, too.
Curtis came up with a recording of that show somewhere, and I still haven't had a chance to listen to it because we don't know what the titles of all the songs, and some of them, that was a long time ago. I can't remember the names of the songs, but
song number 3, song number 8. Well, that's good. I didn't know about that. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, and he wants to put that together with a Case of Brutality.
Nice.
Or actually, I've recorded 11 songs before I had my stroke.
Unreleased material?
Yeah.
Wow. That's exciting.
And that you would love this. That was actually going to be a split album with Gangrene and the Freeze. I did a couple of Freeze songs. They did a couple of Gangrene songs.
No way. Wow.
Yeah.
So is there a chance that that's going to see the light of day?
I think Cliff from the Freeze is really cock-blocking the whole thing.
Okay, Cliff. I know you're listening, man. Help us out here, man.
But
we want that. We want to hear that.
Their stuff came out great. Billy Close is an amazing guitar player. He tore it up on that. And I think they did a Nervous Eater song also. I'm not sure which one.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's something to look forward to. Well, thank you, man, for coming on the show. And Mike, thank you also for coming and driving. You're the limo driver that got Chris here today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to check out your stuff.
It's too bad it's not live because we're looking for some trouble to get into. And if people could call into the studio and let us know, we can find
a party.
Well, I'm going to bring you down the hall to Alvin Long's office. And, you can say hi to Alvin because he's right down the hall. And thanks a lot, Chris Doherty, Mike Worm. Great having you guys on the show.
Oh, the pleasure's all on this side of the table.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Hey, Steve, I got to tell you, man, it's great to see you again.
Oh, man, that was incredible. Got to tell you, man, having legends in the studio here at Voice Motel is a good thing. And Chris Doherty definitely fits the legendary moniker. Gangrene, one of the original American hardcore bands. And Chris told some really funny stories. And I'm going to go hang out with him as soon as I'm finished recording this. But first, what I want to do is I want to tell you about Notch Beer one more time because we're really excited about their new location opening in Brighton at 525 Western Avenue. And it's going to include an outdoor venue. And they plan on having shows in July and August. But, while we're anxiously awaiting the new locale, you can always head up to Salem. Salem's a really nice town. Don't let the witches scare you. Their main base is at 283R Derby, right in the harbor, as they say around here, the harbor, where they serve European-influenced beer in their beer hall and beer garden. And, you can also buy Notch at retail locations in Mass and in Rhode Island and through mail order in Mass and Pennsylvania. And I'll tell you right now, having lived in Pittsburgh for 5 years, I can tell you they love their beer there. So get yourself a Notch. You won't regret it. Speaking of Pittsburgh, I just heard from my good friend Robbie Tabachka that Greg Ide, who owned and operated Ide's Records since 1976, passed away last week. 1976. That's how long they were around. I visited their second location, which was at 1121 Penn Avenue in the 80s and 90s. And later, when I lived in Pittsburgh, where I was for 5 years, I was at their 3-story shop, also on Penn Ave. And I have a lot of good memories of Ides because I met Robbie there, and Robbie was in the band Eviction, who I ended up signing the Metal Blade Records, and I became really good friends with Robbie and Ted Williams, their bass player, and Todd Porter, their singer, and I'm still friends with all those guys today. Todd's in the Cheats right now, which is one of the biggest bands in Pittsburgh, and I have a lot of great memories of Ides. I remember one time I went down there when I was on tour and I was with a band. I believe I was with Pa, and I stopped into the shop, and those guys knew I was coming, and they took me in the back room, and no lie, there was a stripper back there waiting for me, and she did a private show for me in the back room at Ides. It's one of the funniest things that has ever happened. And then at the show that night, now I remember it was Dan the Machine, she showed up with her biker boyfriend, and he was a big dude. And she introduced him to me, and I'm thinking the whole time, does this guy know that she did a private striptease for me? It really happened, man. The good old days of being on the road, the good old rock and roll days. And sorry to hear about Greg Ide passing away. That store was a big part of the Pittsburgh music scene. Please support this podcast. We have a Patreon page. It's patreon.com/twistedrico. And if you want to reach out to me, my email address is twistedrico@gmail.com. We're on Instagram. You can find me at Twisted Rico, and there's a Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico page. It's at Blowing Smoke with TR. There's also Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and everywhere else. We have a Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico YouTube page. Please subscribe and like us and all that stuff. You know how it goes, man. We need your support, man, to keep this going. Thank you to Mike Nash here at Voice Motel in Somerville for engineering the show, doing a great job. If you want to hear another podcast that I'm on that is also recorded here, it's called Seems to Me with Sibylline Seriano and Steve Ricardo. It's also recorded by Mike, and it's also available on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, Google, Breaker. You can hear audio versions on YouTube. We're everywhere. So check that out if you can't get enough of me here. Till the next time we say goodbye, this is Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico. I'm your host, Steve Ricardo. Keep the rock and roll alive, and yes, we do love you, Busy Phillips.